Wonderful. I am Dr. Kerri Nevin, and my husband and I are in private practice together. We're both clinical psychologists at Heartlight Psychological Services in just outside Chicago in Illinois. And I have also, we're also Mayo Clinic wellness coaches. We were certified at the Mayo Clinic, so we got that wellness piece too. But I have been following you for, I think, over a decade.
Oh,
And I recently have been thinking that I would like to expand my reach going outside of one person or two people in a room to something broader. And I had the idea that I'd really love to celebrate people who support those with the focus being mental well-being.
mhm.
And you were one of the first people that I thought of because, as I said, I've been receiving your newsletters now for such a long time. And so, what I'd love to do, if it's okay with you, I prepared some questions to talk with you. And first, what I'd like to do first is just introduce you so that when I show this recording on our website, that people can know who Koelle Simpson is, the fantastic, I'm so excited to learn from Koelle Simpson. I'm super excited. um, so there are myriad ways of approaching therapy, right? And helping people heal. And like I said, I've been so interested in your approach, which is so unique in terms of Equus coaching. And not everybody knows what that is. In fact, I come from a background of being raised riding horses. My mom and I rode equestrian, and my brother and sister and my dad all rode Western. But I'll tell you, I never had a relationship with my horse. And we rode for years.
Yeah.
Um, and I had no idea of the possibility of looking at horses as teachers about life. And so, not like I said, not everyone knows what Equus coaching is. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I guess in the interest of trying to give a little bit of background information, oh, gosh, like a lot of us, went through some pretty early childhood trauma. And by the time I was 8, 9 years old, I was going from being a very affectionate, outgoing kind of kid, wanting to really explore and connect, to becoming really recluse and not wanting to engage with people. And for good reason, right? Those human relationships were becoming really unpredictable and really dangerous. And so at the time, my mother had gotten engaged with a man who owned a very large sod farm. And this is where they grow grass. So it's like commercial grass that they would put down in new homes or new, commercial buildings and things like that. Um, and there were horses there that were kept on substantial acreage. They weren't, in a boarding facility or a barn or something like that where you could just, go walk up to them. They were out in these big fields, just being horses. And at 9 years old, I thought, oh, this is fabulous. It's going to be like the movies. I'm going to walk up and I'm going to feed them a carrot or a peppermint or a something, and they're going to fall in love with me and I'm going to have my new friends. And I was in for a really sort of stark reality check of it. I discovered, oh, this isn't anything like the movies. Um, and I think because as a young girl, when I was 2 years old, I lost the majority of my hearing to spinal meningitis. So I lost all the hearing in my left, and I lost a pretty substantial portion of hearing in my right. And what that did in sort of combination with those early trauma experiences is that it put me in a position where I was really orienting to nonverbal signals. And just like many young kids are, I was fascinated by animals and I was really interested in nature. And, I always wanted to be outside and climbing trees. And exploring. And so when this sort of unfolding happened with the horses, I really wanted to understand, how do I get close to them? How do I connect with them? Um, and it took me quite some time. It took me, a couple of years of a lot of trial and error and having ideas and, kind of falling down and not really getting it until I finally began to understand, oh, they're teaching me about how I'm showing up. There were days where I would go in to connect with them and they wouldn't really have anything to do with me. They'd just keep moving away and moving away. And I would think, what is going on? I'm walking around trying to be really confident and I'm, like trying to, have a bucket of green and they were just like, yeah, no, we're not interested. And I'd be like, oh man. Um and then right. And then there were days where I would go in and as a young girl, I could spend hours wandering around, being a part of the herd, being included, being able to just connect with everybody. And it was just a non-issue. And because it was such a stark contrast, it got me really paying attention to why, what's going on, why. And over time, I gradually began to figure out that they were showing me about my willingness to be authentic with where I was really at. So when I had these kind of false notions that I had to go in and present or perform, or what I would do for other adults to smile and pretend like everything was okay when it really wasn't, right? And the days that I didn't necessarily have to be, crying my eyes out or something, but just to be in a place of authenticity that I was like, well, this is just a really tough day. Being in the truth of what I was really feeling, those are the days where I could spend hours with them without any concerns. And so over time, that helped me to really begin to realize, oh, how we're treating ourselves, the relationship we have towards ourselves, and our need for relationship and connection with each other is kind of the foundation. It's the primary thing that we've got to be paying attention to. Fast forward, I ended up working for a well-known equine clinician in the industry, and kind of got into the work of horse whispering, if you will, even though I don't really like that term. And I was pursuing my degree at the time to become a therapist because this really wanting to understand, how do we integrate trauma? How do we actually heal from these experiences and really restore our capacity to trust one another and be in relationship with one another? And the deep longing for that was, gosh, if I can figure out how horses do this, then there's got to be some kind of hope for me. there's going to be some way that I'm going to figure out how you do this in the human experience. And when I was exploring in the field of, sort of traditional psychology at the time, and this would have been, 1998, early 2000s, I was really frustrated with the education that was being provided. Everything was, here's how you categorize and classify this person. And this is, kind of what category they fall into within the DSM-5, and then your job is done. I thought, wow, this is not at all helpful. I mean, maybe for some people, recognizing that some of the things that they're experiencing, that they're not alone in what they're experiencing, and there's some common patterns that we all are, sometimes go through. But the idea that just sort of leaving it there was really heartbreaking to me, because that was not what I was learning from animals. And that was not what I was learning from nature, was that once you're categorized, you're done. Like, no, that wasn't what I was learning at all. So I made a decision, because of some of the mentors that I had at the time, to step away from the traditional educational route and to pursue current research and to continue to follow the way my intuition was guiding me about how we actually heal from these experiences and repair relationships. And nature and animals, most especially horses, they were my primary teachers in helping me understand what that really looks like.
I just, oh, God, it's so powerful what you're saying. And it's so interesting to me that you started your early life not being able to connect with a sense of hearing, but that helped you go inside. And then that also helped you to be so attuned to what was actually being said. Maybe you're looking at, nonverbal cues, and then that love of animals and in particular horses, that whole world was opened up to you. It's such a dichotomy. It's like you would think because I don't have my hearing, my world has actually, shrunk in some way. But for you, it actually opened you up.
It did. I think we all have the capacity to connect and to communicate and to drop into different states of awareness. And so I don't think that there's anything special about me in terms of connecting or communicating with horses or any other animal for that matter. But having lost my hearing at such an early age, it really oriented me to pay attention in a different way. And it strengthened that muscle, so to speak. The ability to really notice, oh, there was just a big shift in the feeling state in the room. Um, the words may be coming out beautifully, and the words may be saying everything is wonderful and fine, but that's not what the environment is saying, and that's not what the body language is saying, and that's not what that muscle tension in your jaw is saying. Right. So being able to really pay attention to that, an absolute need in my case to pay attention to that so that I could figure out what's going on here, what's really happening. And that gave me, I think, a huge leg up for understanding what the horses were trying to show me. Because if I was in a verbal state of mind, it maybe wouldn't have made so much sense. But watching what they were showing me in terms of their body language and what they were modeling for me in terms of different feeling states, it was a language I could understand.
And it was you were available to engage in that back and forth, in that communication. And I think your life circumstances really provided, you took it. You took the opportunity, you created the opportunity. And I'm fascinated, truly fascinated by, when I think about who you are and your listening ability, and especially that, beyond the sound, but the intuition, the emotion, and your capacity for connection. I'm blown away by it. I've mentioned this before in other interviews that I've done, that I had a social phobia of speaking in front of people from the time I was 12 into my 30s. And it was almost like I was just very disconnected from being able to really relate with other people because I was so anxious, like I was having panic attacks all the time. And certainly due to, traumatic life occurrences, right? I watched your TED Talk from 2011. God, I don't even know how many people I've sent it to. Every word that came out of your mouth, I was riveted. I was just so blown away by your thoughtfulness and I think this is one word that I would use to describe you, your capacity for presence. And when you have someone show up to the table with both hands open, the way that you do, I'm just excited to be able to learn from you. It would be a dream of mine to come and take a course and be there on site with you, and really learn from what it is that you do. And so would you say that, well, I have some questions here. Um, the feeling within your TED Talk when you talked about not being good enough, like
Mhm.
questioning your ability, I think that's such a ubiquitous emotion. We're always sort of looking around and comparing ourselves to other people to see,
Mhm.
hey, do I measure up? And there's that feeling of not being good enough. Um, when I mean, you were so candid about that being your experience. When that does come up for you or for the people that you work with, are there other tools and techniques that you employ to help mirror that back and then be able to overcome it? And if so, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do think because we've so we've sort of been born into this current time frame with this human culture that has a pervasive narrative of you have to do something or be something, perform in some way in order to be good enough to belong, in order to be deserving of love. And that's a really horrible and terrifying story to be living with for every single one of us. You don't see that in the rest of the animal kingdom, right? There isn't this idea that like, oh gosh, I have to, my hair color has to be a certain way, or my size has to be a certain way, or my orientation for what I'm drawn to has to, fit a certain um, avenue in order to be deserving of belonging. There's just an innate sense of I'm here. I am a part of this environment. I have my friends and my family and my social dynamics and the diversity of all the different plants and animals around me. So it's a really different world in some ways that the rest of the animal kingdom inhabits. And yet we have constructed of our own doing a world that's very divisive, and an environment that feels very um, non-inclusive, and an environment that can feel really scary. And so, one of the things that I think was such a profound lesson that continues every day to be a profound lesson for me, is that when I get kind of swept up in that current of our human culture that says, well, you're not performing well enough. You're not, doing whatever the thing is that should be of a high measurement. Um, I come back to remembering, oh, right, it's about connection. If I'm, if I am stop, trying to assess where am I in terms of comparing to anything else or anyone else, I have to come back to, well, who is it I'm longing to connect with right now? And what is it that they're showing me about what feels good in this connection and what doesn't, and what pacing is working and what isn't? So, for example, in that TED Talk, that particular horse that I was working with, um, he, at that time, I had had quite a substantial success of working with really difficult horses. And so I was kind of, maybe getting this idea to my head that I knew what I was doing. Um, and when I got to working with him, suddenly nothing that I understood or knew was working, right? Everything was just, I was just sort of hitting a wall. And that was such an important and powerful moment because I had to really let those ideas go and come back to just our connection and feeling, okay, everything I need to know about you is right here in front of me because you're going to show me. You're going to tell me, you're going to communicate to me through your breath, through your body language, through your muscle tension. So let's explore, if I'm willing to be wholeheartedly myself and you're willing to be wholeheartedly yourself, can we find a way to each other? Can we find a way that we can actually trust one another, understand each other's needs, understand each other's boundaries? And I'm going to make a commitment that I'm not going to give up on that. I'm going to make a commitment that I'm going to keep showing up, and I'm going to keep asking you, and I'm going to keep finding a way that creates that sense of safety. And so, just about a month ago, I was in Montana working with an untouched wild Mustang, and I found myself again in another similar situation. I've had the great privilege of being able to gentle quite a few Mustangs in my lifetime thus far. It's one of my favorite things to do. They're such phenomenal teachers. And this particular mare was, I would say, maybe one of the second most sensitive Mustangs I'd ever worked with. And she really was asking of me, drop all your previous ideas, drop all your previous experience, forget about what you know, and just be here with me. And I was like, okay, yes, you got it. Thank you. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And so, all the ideas and goals and objectives and things just kind of, let them go. So I would say, back to your question about, not that I like to shell out advice, but what I can offer in my own learning experience is if we can come back to focusing on what feels like quality connection with either ourselves or the person that we're interacting with, and do our best to sort of drop a lot of external pressures and preconceived ideas. It really takes us out of this mindset of trying to measure up and really being more centered and, with the heart about how we actually form relationships with each other.
I mean, it's so profound what you said. I'm thinking to a couple session that I recently was a part of. And, when you're dealing with more than one, you're dealing with, double,
Mhm.
which is like quadruple, really. I always say one kid is
I
like,
work with couples all the time.
yes, yes. And, you know, I'm, I have that desire to direct each of the people in the room with how do you connect with yourself? Let's get authentic. And in so doing, I think that leads to vulnerability in the best case scenarios. And what is so obvious to me in terms of what you do is you are so willing to show up as who you are. And that's just a skill that I am still learning. Um, and I don't know that that will ever stop. But that you come in with such interest and such curiosity, which are such powerful emotions, and put you right here and right now, which is, that's where the power actually lives. So I find myself just wanting to learn more from you and just feel that, you know, there's such opportunity here if you're able to move beyond the fight or flight response. And that's so connected to, and from my perspective, not being able to show up. Because if you're, the fight or flight response, as I understand it, is 1,500 biochemical events. I mean, this is your brain and your body on drugs. And that was the salient thread for me as someone who struggled with panic disorder from a very young age. I just wasn't available to have that level of connection. And so I find myself now in my 50s learning how to do that, more effectively. Excuse me. And I'm learning so much just by hearing you speak and the way you show up and knowing, can I, asking this question, can I give myself permission to just show up as I am and have it not be my job to heal anyone or fix anyone? That is not within my superpower toolbox.
Right, right. It's such a yeah, I think again it comes back to the cultural narrative that we are born into and we experience, and everything about our education or school environment is do these things, do them in this particular way. You're going to then get the recognition, the gold star, and when people are coming to us for support, um, when we have when we're sort of still really significantly affected by that concept, um, it it has an impact. It creates tension. It creates tension and stress in our own bodies that there's something we've got to do to perform well. And that, we're incredibly sensitive and social beings. We can feel one another. And when our clients are feeling like, oh gosh, my therapist thinks, she has to do something here. She's got to get me somewhere. Then it becomes, am I doing a good enough job? Am I doing and so now no one's feeling relaxed. Right.
Right.
Um, so I think it's an important question to ask ourselves, no matter what role we're serving, what sort of position we might find ourselves in, to ask ourselves, what do we need to feel a genuine sense of safety right now?
Mhm.
Whether that's a permission we need to give ourselves or knowing that we have particular people that have our backs no matter what we do or don't do.
Mhm.
Um, Being able to cultivate that genuine sense of safety is what really supports that sense of belonging. And from there, when we feel that sense of safety, our nervous system can let go into that parasympathetic function where we then have access to our essential self, our essential wisdom, our authenticity. Um, I don't think it's a matter of saying to oneself, well, just stop being afraid or just stop doing that. Or, if we could, we would.
I know, right?
Right.
Not that. Just tell myself, don't be afraid.
Right. Yeah. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work. And so I think it's about befriending the parts of ourselves that get worried about approval, befriending the parts of ourselves that get scared. Um, Being able to really cultivate a genuine environment of safety and being curious about what we need for a sense of safety, because that continues to evolve as well.
Well, what I love is the fact that when you have this kind of information that you're sharing, you realize, or at least I realize, this is within me. I don't need to depend on anybody else for my safety, because I don't want to be dependent on anything that's outside of me. I mean, listen, I know that I have those dependencies. I know that they're there. But I think that within that nervous system fight or flight response, it bounces you out of remembering that you have this capacity to self soothe and show up for yourself. Because that's such, that biochemistry is such a driver for being bounced out of yourself.
So I'd love to speak to that a little bit more, and if it's okay, I'd like to expand maybe the way we might tend to think about it.
I'd love to hear
Um,
this. Yes.
Yeah, so one of the again, another really profound lesson for me and really taking note of how the rest of the animal kingdom navigates life.
Right.
Um, it's a I've come to deeply appreciate interdependence. And so we need that capacity for having some self-regulation, being able to know how we nurture ourselves, how we really tend to taking care of ourselves, how we can sort of develop those skills for self-regulation, like, what actually helps you take a deeper breath. What do you do when no one else is around that enables you to settle or to calm down or to feel some sense of peacefulness, be able to feel your muscles relaxing a little bit? What you have a unique access to that is unique for you. And so what does that look like, and being willing to develop your own relationship with it? But we really need one another. We're highly social beings. Our bodies are designed to co-regulate with each other. And if you said to a horse like, okay, buddy, your new home is going to be at the far end of the farm in a pasture by yourself, um, you're going to watch really quickly how that will generate an enormous volume of stress, running and whinnying and pawing and sweating, and it'll go on for a long time because they know, oh, no, 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 I'm not supposed to be by myself. That's a really dangerous place to be. I need the relationships, the dynamics, the wisdom, the understanding, the sensitivity of my entire herd. And I need to be able to flow and thrive within that. So we can become really, depending on our attachment styles, we can become really clingy and needy of relationship to a place where we don't have that ability to self-regulate.
Mhm.
And we can also go the other end of the spectrum where we become so hyper independent and avoidant of relationship that we don't know how to regulate with others. And the truth is, we need a balance between those two.
Mhm.
We need to actually learn and remember about our capacity for interdependence because that is a major facet of our sense of safety. We grew up in tribes and villages that, explored and moved together. And we had aunties and uncles and cousins and, family members that we called kin from neighboring tribes that knew us intimately, that we grew up together, that we understood each other's talents and strengths and weaknesses, that we would go through initiations together, that we would go through ceremonies together. So there's a deep need for our remembering about the importance of interdependence and beginning to develop that within ourselves to be able to heal some of the trauma wounds that we've been through, depending on, whatever our coping strategies have been, to literally come back and remember ourselves, restore our capacity to connect with each other and be genuinely supported by each other.
Wonderful. I mean, it's just so beautifully stated. And I really love just the analogy of, yes, there's me, but then there's the me with people that I love and my tribe or whatever that is. And um, I, 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 it's funny sometimes when I get emotional, I'll affect like the computer start acting kind of wonky. Um, Electronics seem to go a little crazy. I get upset, and so you can feel when someone's staring at you. I think that's a pretty ubiquitous experience as well. Like, when somebody's staring at you. That's an energy. That's something that, like oxygen, you can't necessarily see, but you absolutely feel. And I think it's a miracle when you have someone like yourself, Koelle, who's able to remind us that we can remember, we can come back, and we can be more because we're allowing ourselves to be seen and to be present and to join within. And that you honor yourself when you give yourself that time and that attention. And then you come to the table again full, being able to join. And how do you remind people of their value and their worth when they've been through trauma? What does that look like?
There's a couple, I don't think there's any right way. I think that we have a lot of wonderful access tools for being able to work with trauma, and really begin to integrate and heal the traumatic experiences that we've all been through. Because it is, we are living in a time where it's really prolific, and I think it touches everyone's lives. Um, and so for me, some of those access tools are helping people to feel safe coming into environments of being in nature. So really being able to feel the container of, oh, that bird call just signaled that there's, a snake in the area. And that just made the monkey chirp. And now, the gazelles understand what's going on. And now, the elephants, they aren't so worried about that. And to be able to see that there's a conversation happening where everyone's gifts and everyone's uniqueness belongs. And to be a part of a larger collective family, to feel what that feels like, and then to be there to help someone talk about what does that bring up for you, and let's take some time to look at what was your experience and what happened for you. So I think taking people into immersion experiences in nature to remember is a really powerful and important access tool that many people can feel a sense of safety with because our human relationships have been so traumatic. Um, and then I do a lot of supporting clients one-on-one with somatic processing, working with the body and really understanding and tracking what's going on with our nervous system and helping our physiology and our nervous system to unpack some of those traumatic experiences. Um, I also really appreciate and do a lot of work in attachment theory. So working with those early relationship dynamics and coming to understand what are some of the strategies we developed when we were kids to
Mhm.
deal with these really stressful relationships? How did we overcome them? And when we can gain some conscious awareness around it, we can begin to bring that 5-year-old self or that 8-year-old self, we can begin to bring him or her forward in time to begin to have some of the healing experiences that they didn't have when we were children. Being able to be really intentional about the relationships that we're seeking, the experiences that we're going into, to help create some corrective outcomes that couldn't happen when we were children because we were at the mercy of, the adults that were also carrying many years of generational trauma. The other thing that I think is really a profound access tool that's really starting to emerge with more awareness within the field is psychedelic therapy.
Mhm.
Um, it's work that I've had a deep appreciation for and affiliation with for about 13 years, and I think that it's not for everyone. It's not a magic bullet by any stretch of the imagination, but it does create a really profound opening. And when you have someone who really understands that work and understands what that opening is all about and really knows how to provide quality facilitation within those openings, we can do some really remarkable healing work in our own experiences of trauma and be able to regain a deeper, access to ourselves. So I think we're getting better in terms of if you say, the field of psychology or therapeutic, or personal development or health and wellness, we're getting a little bit better at understanding that trauma is at the foundation of so much of our challenges and behaviors. And we're gaining more awareness of different access tools that help people to restore that sense of safety and to begin to heal some of those early experiences that have taken place.
Well, I don't know if you noticed I was tearing up while you were talking about the whole, being a part.
Yeah.
And that just like, oh, my body got all hot. And I'm like, okay, there is something here. There's
Yeah.
something just so resonant. And it's interesting, when I ask like, what are you drawing from? What are the tools that you use? I feel like one of the tools that you use is your voice. And because it's projected, which is a weird thing to think that this could be projected through a screen on a computer, but it's as real as if I'm in the room with you. Maybe it feels a little different if I'm able to be in the room with you, but I just want you to know from my experience that you are doing something too with your voice and this, beautiful invitation to join and to be a part of. And I so appreciated that. So
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
thank you for that. Um, well, I have to tell you, I've just so appreciated your time and enjoyed this conversation so much. And I can't wait to see what more you're going to do. Um, and do you, so it's the Koelle Institute for Equus Training or Coaching, excuse me.
It's actually just my name, koellesimpson.com.
Koelle
Um,
Simpson. Okay.
yeah, so that training program, the Koelle Institute, was a training program I developed over the course of 10 years to teach people how to facilitate with horses. And during the pandemic, I made a decision to let that program go to a longtime teaching instructor of mine. So it now is overseen by someone else. And I'm really orienting my focus to serving, coming back to, instead of teaching people to how to facilitate this work, really coming back to serving the larger audience of people who are struggling with trauma and struggling with the integration of trauma. And so I do a lot of individual client work and a lot of retreat programs. And there's hopefully a book that will be published in the not too distant future, and also hopefully a film that'll be coming out in the not too distant future. So I'm
So exciting.
thank you. Yeah, trying to share as much of this experience of really helping us to feel safe, to come back to remembering ourselves. Is I think it's where I feel called to serve, and so that's where my energy is.
Well, you can bet that I'm going to be waiting and watching for that to come out. And it's just my deep privilege and pleasure to be able to share your wisdom and your knowledge
Thank you.
and how incredibly vulnerable you've allowed yourself to be. And it's just, you're a real treasure. And I just want to thank you so much, Koelle Simpson. This has been a real honor for me to talk with you.
That's so sweet. Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you reaching out and making the request. And it's fun to be able to share these stories and reflect on these things together. So thank you.
Well, Oprah did say you have to ask for what you want. And honestly, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure at all. And I received a response so quickly. I was just so touched. I was like, wow, this is amazing. She wants to share in this way. So I can't wait to put this up on our website. And my hope is to be in touch with you and letting you know what I'm going to be doing moving forward.
Yes.
And so I'm glad to have your contact information to be able to reach out to you and share and just tell the world about who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you, and good luck with your continued work. It sounds like you're doing really beautiful work yourself. So it's nice to know that we have kindred spirits, that stretch across this globe. So thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I'll let you go. I don't know if you got the little video I sent of the guy singing to the bird. Did you get that?
Um,
I sent it. I sent it yesterday. My brother-in-law, who's Brazilian, he's just an amazing individual. And he sent me this video of this man playing a guitar, and this little teeny tiny bird was sitting on his shoulder while he's playing the guitar. And then the bird chirps and like chimes in, and he laughs and he's saying, oh my gosh, it was so great. And then I included the translation from Portuguese to English. So that's for you, for me, because I thought if anyone is going to enjoy this video,
yeah,
it is
yes, ma'am.
inside.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think it went through to my assistant, so I'll ask her for it. But yes, I mean, that's the thing. That life is so much more loving and magical than we thought it was. And
Yes.
when we can continue to heal the trauma that we've been carrying and start to let go of some of our assumptions, we're going to get to experience that awe and beauty and, really being a part of the family that is actually here for us, rather than being so fragmented and separated from it. So, yeah, pull out your guitar and sing to the birds and let them sing with you. Why not?
And the bird was like leaning in closer. I was like, she is going to love this.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, my dear. Well, I will let you go. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day.
I will.